Really diverse range of thoughts here, all very interesting, and I will open questions for any of the panelists.
We have a couple microphones that will run up and down the stairs here.
So, are there questions in the previous panel?
Eric came with the Shidoshi Institute for animal and also but related to the models of sustainability or green technologies, the use of autonomous systems or shore-based remotely operated systems. Where do you see, and actually we could think about this from shipping as well, the utilization of autonomous vessels, not necessarily to supplement, but really to replace manned vessels, because we just saw recently that the U.S. Navy has been testing a new autonomous vessel, I think it was in the Mississippi River, 130-foot surface vessel that can stay at sea for almost 3 weeks.
Right, we're testing right now mostly on the air side, the UAVs, primarily on the icebreakers, you know, to scout for where the ice is thin and things like that. Our need is not so much in the ISR or the sensor world. We have sensors and we got technology, we have information that we can't act on because we don't have the ship there to actually provide the end game. So our limiting resource right now is the manned boarding team that can go on board and actually execute the case or whatever needs to be done. So having the sensors out there running around autonomously is not going to really tell us anything that we don't have. There's certainly a future for that, but that's not our biggest need right now.
I guess let me just quick follow. I wasn't thinking, it was more along the idea of sustainability, right? So large vessels take a lot of people in order to, one of the reasons why ships are also so big, it takes a lot of people. And to support, it takes a lot of infrastructure to support that many people. We are looking at ways to reduce the number of people, maybe it's through automation, new systems on board vessels, perhaps non-autonomous or remote shoreside, remotely operated platforms that utilize new technologies to reduce the number of people that are required on board to operate these systems.
Yeah, if you look at all of our new cutters, they've all used less people. Every generation of cutter uses less, or ship uses a smaller crew than its predecessor did through the automation. But there's an optimum there. You can go over the point of payback, especially when you're talking about software, where the software starts costing you well more than the people. I mean, it used to be people were cheap. Steel was expensive. You put a lot of people on a battleship because people were cheap. It went the other way. You put the technology on board to reduce the crews. We've done that. The Navy's doing that. The crews are smaller now. But you reach kind of a point of an inflection point where there's a happy medium between technology cost and people cost, because especially with cyber and the cyber warfare and everything else that's going on right now, the technology cost starts getting really extreme. And you got to find that balance point between the cost of people and the cost of the technology.
I'm just going to say something on the commercial maritime side. Just give you an idea, an average size tanker has 21 to 23 seafarers on board. And it's running the ship across the oceans. There's more and more automation that is coming into the commercial maritime space. But there aren't that many people on board that are actually running the ship. You'll find the cruise industry has more because they've got the service side as well as the operational side. But shipping is running fairly lean, within requirements, and they are looking at more and more automation. Will there be a ship crossing the ocean with that's totally autonomous? It's expected by 2050 there might. I still believe that the human facility for integrating information and synthesizing information is an important component, though.
So I don't know who to direct this question to, but it was something that I was worrying about on the flight up here and then driving here through what I considered a blizzard from a Miami perspective. but clearly part of the whole concept of being resilient with regard to energy, which is what everybody's talking about, has to do with having a distributed system, microgrids, distributed storage capacity, all these other things. And it occurred to me, having just come from another meeting at the National Center for Environmental Information, that our information systems are going in 180 degrees opposite direction, nationally and internationally. We are going back to the model that I thought we went away with when I was a graduate student, essentially, but now in Extrema, where we all had a central computer and we had a terminal on our desk, then we all became distributed. And now we are very rapidly moving to a world where it's not just all the data is in the cloud, a great deal of the computing capacity is in the cloud. So I'm wondering about who's worrying about the incredible lack of resilience that's implied by this model, and how this impacts transportation, it impacts security, impacts everything.
Sounds like Massport.
I don't know. This really is not my wheelhouse, but I know that we took a very thorough tour of a data backup center that kind of supports all of Massport's IT work, etc. And a lot of it's kept in the cloud. This particular company has Netflix and Amazon and, a lot of really large providers, and it has Massport backup. And when we had a huge blackout, I think it was 2008, this was the only facility that was continuing to run. But Massport still wasn't happy that we would have enough kind of redundancy. So I mentioned this $2 million that we're spending on a co-location center because we wanted to get it outside our energy provider district. So Massport, the airport, and the seaport are use Eversource as an energy provider, and the co-location centers in Lowell, and it's going to be using National Grid. So there's redundancy that we're adding because we realize that the cloud is can be somewhat vulnerable, and so we're just taking all of our data and making sure we have it hardwired as well as in the cloud, as well as in a totally different location. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but since I was given the mic, that's the best I could do.
Yeah, let me just follow in on that. One of the responsibilities CoStar has is securing our ports for cargo. Certainly, if you shut down LALB when we have a strike, we see the impact that has then ripples throughout the economy. Post 9/11, we were very involved with port security, but it was on a physical security. How do you, TWIT cards and fences, and how do you keep track of the people coming in and out, and making sure you don't have any kind of nuclear devices or terrorism or any type of cargo or person control coming in and out of the port. Well, now you have the same problem on the cyber side. How do you control that port from a computer technology side? Because certainly if you shut down the server that's operating all those cranes and operating that port, you have the same effect as if the longshoremen just walk out on strike. So in fact, it's worse because you don't know what's happening until after it happens, and then trying to recover that system is going to be very, very difficult. So that's one of the initiatives we're working with through DHS and with our port partners to try to take that port security model to the next level and apply it to the cybersecurity domain.
So I have a question actually about incentives. And that's where they'll be asking your tenants, presumably to make some investments in millions, and that's the cost. And I'm wondering how that incentive structure works, and whether they seem to be agreeable to these kinds of ideas, or fighting you. They don't want to make those covered by insurance.
That's a great question. I think that, so I have a kind of a two-pronged answer. Working with the tenants, first of all, if it's just a sidebar, if it's a very large developer who, wants to build a hotel or a conference center on our land, the incentive is just, you want to build on our land, this is what you'll do. So that's a little regulatory, and that's not, I don't think, what you're discussing or asking me about. The tenants that we're going to be working with at the shipyards and the smaller purveyor and the smaller business owner, I don't know how it's going to work, but the incentive initially is just going to be a sharing of information and showing them it's in their best interest to operationally get prepared. And the reason I'm starting with the operational flood plan is I consider it the low-hanging fruit. It doesn't cost a lot of money to think about putting your hazardous waste, up on the top shelf or, whatever it is. So we're going to be giving them information that will hopefully they'll see the value in being able to get back to business after a storm more immediately, so it's an economic incentive for them. I think the tougher choice is when we're asking people to do something that does cost a lot of money and to cost share in a flood prevention wall or something of that nature. And I think by starting with the operational flood plan, where you can develop trust and you start to get a common understanding among people in the same geographic area, that there's going to be a better incentive for them to then agree. Yeah, and I also think, Massport will also provide, I guess, financial incentives in that it's willing to do a lot of the infrastructure work to make sure. I'm working with I just find this isn't what Massport's doing, but I find it interesting because I've been asked to speak a lot in East Boston, and it abuts the airport. And a lot of things that can be done on Massport land can also help the neighborhood of East Boston become more resilient. And so they've been having these neighborhood meetings, and the incentive they have for the businesses and the people to come to the meetings is they give everybody $25, not agency folks, but everybody gets a check when they leave the meeting, and they get a fabulous meal that's donated by a local Peruvian or Colombian restaurant. And so it's a token of appreciation, and the meetings are always held at a time when the average business owner can attend. And so we're having incentives coming from the foundation world where they're actually providing money. Massport's going to be providing information, and it's going to be hopefully providing a platform where people can see it's in their own self-interest to do this.
I think in terms of the initiatives that I've been involved in, the greatest initiative has been really the sense of mission. From a resiliency point of view, I mentioned the 2010 earthquake in Chile, the grade 9. We'd actually been lucky in that a few years before that, we'd had an earthquake preparedness workshop, something similar to today, bringing experts forward. We knew that an earthquake was going to come at some time, so we got prepared for it, and we saw the benefits of that when we had the big one. But that was people were incentivized because they had a commitment to the mission, commitment to keeping these machines working, commitment to optimum performance, and that ultimately, that's about your working culture. So that's very important. In terms of energy saving, just generally, and the guide or the push for sustainability. In terms of incentives, we did provide some modest incentives financially for people who put forward good ideas. But one way of incentivizing these sorts of things on a regular way is make sure a commitment to sustainability features on employee performance appraisals as well. And you're actually measuring the extent to which people are contributing towards your mission there. So there's a lot to be done in this particular area.
Sean Coughlin with Gloston. I just want to make a a comment about energy efficiency and the general subject, and also kind of tied into some of the incentive points that Mr. McAvoy was making. There's a lot of talk about energy efficiency, and there's been some talk today about it. What I think is interesting is that, at least in the marine world, there's been very little movement to actively monitor that. But the technology does exist in terms of fuel consumption monitoring, which can be implemented on board ships. But in order to, there's grand discussions and everything about different technologies or operational changes, et cetera, but without a means to accurately monitor fuel consumption, there's very little real way to gather that data in order to say, well, this is working or that's working. That's one thing that I don't know if they'll be. I'm not going to be here tomorrow, but the issue of fuel consumption monitoring is something that I would like to see discussed more within the commercial shipping world, which I know it is somewhat, but in particular within the research vessel community, which it hasn't been, in my opinion, discussed enough. That's one comment. And the other one, which is related, is when you talk about incentives, I did some research on a paper last year for a client, and one of the things we were looking at was fuel consumption monitoring, and discussing fuel consumption monitoring with some commercial operators. The subject was new to me, and I was quite interested that what they said was the reason it saves you fuel, because all it does is monitor fuel consumption, but the way that it actually saves you fuel is by engaging, what they have found is by engaging the people in the organization, in the operations on board, and making them active sort of participants in the process of saving fuel. And sometimes that can be through introducing incentives into the organization, whether that is financial, or sometimes the incentive is simply the engagement itself. People feel as if they're participating in a positive activity. So I just wanted to put that out there, and anyway, see what people have to say about it.
I'd like to respond to that. First off, fuel is an extremely high cost for ship operators, and they're very conscious of their fuel utilization. And you're going to, more and more of the companies are utilizing dashboards that monitor their energy efficiency because it's such a high cost center. And I don't know if it's my Mike Gaffney or someone else's Mike Gaffney that's going to be speaking. Is that you, darling? It's so good to see you. And Mike's going to be speaking later about various ways that you can talk about energy efficiency on vessels, from trim tabs to bottom paints to speed. One of the things we discovered in shipping is something called slow steaming, where we were able to decrease our emissions and still perform our delivery functions by slowing down. And there's an optimum speed that was identified. Maersk started, and lots of others have embraced it. We find that it's so important. And Mike's going to talk about this. 1% change doesn't sound like a lot, but when you add up lots of 1% changes, you get more efficiency and therefore lower costs. Just like the rest of the world, from 2008 onward, the shipping industry has suffered major financial challenges. So we're looking at every single aspect of how we can save money, and fuel efficiency is one of that. So making those investments in decreasing our footprint, if you will, is become not just an environmental but also an economic decision.
Probably we're closer to the research vessel issue in that it's getting the mission done, and it's not just getting from point A to point B. And it's hard to measure and hard to evaluate energy efficiency doing a certain research task. But we found when we did our energy metering at the buildings, it's a behavior thing, and we've got a lot of young folks. And as soon as we started measuring, you're posting scores. They're very competitive. We didn't have to pay them anything more, but as soon as you're posting a score, they want to compete with each other, and suddenly it's, hey, I've got a role, I'm part of this, this is my score, I got to be part of it. So it's more of a behavior modification than really a economic incentive in terms of a business model.
I think it's absolutely crucial. Measurement doesn't have to be an introduction of sophisticated technology to measure in many instances, but it's very important that you have measurement as part of the system. It's only with the system combined with education can you produce the behavioral change. I must admit I've forgotten what I was just going to say. So I won't continue with that train of non-thought. Actually, I'll tell you what I was going to say. What I was going to say is one of the strongest ways to get support for measurement is make sure that you're absolutely disciplined in not measuring anything that you're not going to use. Too often, we measure lots and lots of things which have no importance whatsoever, which create bureaucracy, and that turns people off. So just focus on measuring those things that actually make a difference.
All right, so I think we have time for one more question. Do any of the students have questions? Yeah.
I took note that several of you talked about the communities that host you, the Coast Guard or Massport, your surrounding communities. And it seems as though both of you have engaged your communities to some extent. Is there any other good ideas? You had pointed out that you provided some energy to Groton, and Robin pointed out that they've been doing some workshops in East Boston. Are there any other incentives or motivations to engage the communities of which you are a part of? Because the communities, as you know, have a real challenge ahead of them, and they often do not have the resources to deal with this. So any other thoughts?
What I will just say is it can be a challenge. I'll just recount one experience of, I mentioned that in Chile there wasn't a great commitment to recycling, and the observatory had a lot of personnel involved in a gated community surrounding the base facility buildings. We started a recycling program, and the biggest problem that we had was then word got around in terms of the community, and the whole community was recycling where we were, so we had to move as a result of that. But now there is much greater emphasis in recycling within the community. So, but we haven't actually reached out in this area. The area of outreach has been in other areas.
I'll just add that for the project that we've been working on, I mean, simply disseminating information about risk and then serve as an incentive for people to then participate in the process. So once people see, for example, those pictures of their facilities with that 21-foot storm surge, and it starts to sink in that they actually do bear some of that burden and some of that risk, we think that that will serve as a way for them to then make some investments towards change and reducing that risk, which then has some positive ripple effects on the rest of the community. Because as that one facility reduces its own risk, the risk goes down for everybody around it.
One of the areas that's been helpful for us is with NMEPA is we have created the tools for our members to take into the community. And so we have members that will take our beach cleanup in a box, if you will, and do it in their local communities. They'll take our K-12 programs and put them into their after-school programs or some of their before-school programs. So because we're not a large organization, we rely on the boots on the ground of our members and our strategic alliances in order to disseminate the information. But we're finding that there is more and more interest and more requests that we get for our materials because there is such a level of engagement. And we're delighted at the response we're getting.
Yeah, I think primarily our engagements with our younger folks in the Coast Guard, and we send them out in the community. They do a lot of environmental work, but it's more for recruiting, to be honest with you, than really outreach to the community. We want to be good community partners wherever we're at. We just don't want to be the folks behind the wall. So we do reach out to the community, but it's more for recruitment. It's more for community involvement. It's not necessarily for environmental and sustainability things, but the young folks today, they want to be involved in an organization that shares their values and has sustainability in mind. So we want to make sure we're showing that side of the military, because all they see sometimes is a big ship or some other part of the military. We want to make sure they understand what the Coast Guard is and how we're a little bit different than the rest of DoD. So it may be more of a self-serving recruiting motivation on our point, but we do get out in the community just for that reason.
All right, I think we are out of time and moving toward lunch, so thank you very much, everybody.